This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show 227.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everybody? This is Josh Dorkin, host to the BiggerPockets Podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. Brandon Turner. What's up, man? Welcome to the mainland.
Thank you. I'm back home now. It's raining and cold, but I come back, and all of a sudden I realize my host has changed to I don't want to call him hobo. Is that a bad word? But maybe just like, you look a little, maybe, I don't know, alcoholic, drugged out. I don't know what the word is.
Wow. Are you seeing like a reflection of yourself in the mirror here? Is that what's going on? Are you commenting on my beard? Is that is that
what you call that? Oh, I thought that was like mascara covered in on your peach fuzz or something.
Yeah, I shaved this morning.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Yeah, most interesting man in the world. Yeah, very, very, very nice. You look very, very Portland.
Awesome.
Yeah, actually, you got hurt. I heard you got an injury on your hand or something, right? So you can't shave anymore.
I had surgery last week. Hand surgery. It was relatively involved, and I don't quite feel confident to shave, so I've decided to allow myself to get hobo chic like yourself there, Brandon, and rock the beard for a couple days. But
hashtag hobo chic. That's going to be
hashtag hobo chic for sure. But yeah, man, no, it hurts a lot. They did a lot of work, but definitely recovering.
I'm sorry, Josh. I'm very sorry.
You're actually a sorry person, but I know you are not sorry. So thanks for trying.
Well, let's tell everyone the story of how you broke your hand. So you were at a biker bar, like the typical biker bar, and this guy walks up to you and he's like, "Hey, aren't you Josh Dorkin from the BiggerPockets Podcast?" And then he says, how's it feel working with Brandon and knowing that he started BiggerPockets?" And you just got mad and punched him.
Wow. Your imagination just runs wild, buddy.
Wild and free.
No, years and years of sports and volleyball and things like that. I think I beat it up a little bit, but
that's a lame story. I like mine better.
Yeah, well, whatever. It's all good, man. Keep going with this fantasy that you've got.
I will.
So, yeah, and
you got into a fight
do
with
what
a guy,
you do. Yeah,
bald, he was angry. All right, so moving on.
Anyway, yes. Hey, man. So welcome back. It is good to have you back. Not sitting on your porch out in Hawaii as the rest of us suffer here at home.
Yeah, well,
good trip.
It was a good trip. It was a good time. So if you guys want to go out to Hawaii sometime, I encourage it. It's not a bad way to spend a month. So
yeah, definitely cool, man. Well, listen, we have a great show today. And
it's a fantastic
definitely
show today.
A higher level show for sure.
Yeah, I am convicted. This was a very convicting show.
You're convicted?
I'm convicted of things that I need to do
You
more
should
like
be
Joe.
Convicted.
I guess it is Joe.
You're convinced, maybe?
No, I'm convicted of the things I suck at, and I'm like, is that the word? Am I using the right word? I'm like, man.
You have conviction.
I have conviction. Well, no, but it's not conviction. It's like I'm convicted by how awesome our guest is and how not awesome I am. That's what I'm convicted of. So anyway, today we'll get to that show in a little bit. But before we do, let's get to today's quick tip. All right, so today's quick tip actually is something that we mentioned in the show, but I want to say it here just in case you don't, you leave early and you don't stay till the end of the show because it was a little bit later in it. But the tip actually comes from our friend Jeff Woods, who is the host of the One Thing podcast. Check that out. He says this. He says, when people come up to you and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And people say that all the time. "Hey, how you doing?"
I'm great, thanks.
Yeah, I'm great, thanks. Right? We all say that. He's like, you're missing out on a massive opportunity to let people know what you need or what you want or what you're up to, so when somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, what are you up to?" Not much. You say, "What about you?" Right? That's the standard response. Instead, it's going to be, "Hey, I'm looking for this type of property. Hey, I'm looking for this kind of deal. I'm looking for this kind of person, whatever." I mean, let people know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're missing out on, dozens of opportunities a week potentially to let people know what you need and what you're up to.
That's great. I love
Quick
it.
tip.
Well done.
Thank you.
I guess
wasn't mine, but I'll take it.
Yeah, that's great. This is show 227 of the BiggerPockets Podcast. Make sure to check out the show notes at BiggerPockets.com/show 227. 7. So today's guest is Joe Fairless. Joe started in the residential single-family investing space, and his story about all that is really cool. And ultimately, he progressed to start doing these much, much larger multifamily deals to the point where he's done well over $100 million in multifamily real estate. And it's fascinating. Sounds like he's been rocking and rolling. He's got some fantastic advice, fantastic tips, lots of great things to get inspired from. So definitely pay attention on this one, and hopefully we get your mind going. And let's bring him in. So, Joe, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you here.
Hey, nice to be here, Brandon and Josh. This is going to be entertaining. I can already tell.
This should be a lot of fun. Josh is kind of boring, but I'll be a lot of fun anyway. We'll have a good time today.
Brandon tweeted last night, by the way, in response to somebody, and they're like, Brandon, you should write another book or something. And Brandon writes, the title's going to be Brandon Turner, the Legend.
No, it was Legendary, The Life of Brandon Turner.
Well, whatever.
New York Times best-selling book right there.
Joe, can his head get any bigger? First question.
I don't know. I mean, he's filling up the computer screen as it is already.
That's how I roll. No, that was a tweet in response to, so Scott Trench released his book a couple weeks ago, Set for Life, and somebody said, "Oh, you gotta beat Scott Trench now." I'm like, "Well, how do I beat Scott Trench? I mean, that book is doing amazing. I mean, we sold out. He's killing
that book's killing it. Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, we actually sold out of our entire first printing, like 5,000 books, like within like a day or two. It was crazy, and then Amazon went out of print and. Anyway, drama in a good way. So let's get to your story. We're not talking about Scott Trench today or the legend Brandon Turner.
Legend in his own mind.
I feel like you're doing something subliminal with the listeners where you're trying to make your name always associated to the legend.
Well, the legend, yeah. Eventually people will hear that word and they'll be like, wait, isn't Brandon the legend? Anyway. No, and there is a story behind Legendary. Scott Trench actually is the legend, and we talk about him a lot in that connotation. So I'm trying to steal it from him. Anyway, back to your story, or let's start with your story. Joe, you do a lot of real estate investing. I know you've got some big stuff, and most of our listeners might not know who you are. So can you start at the beginning? Who are you, and how did you get into this real estate investing business?
Sure. So I am originally from Texas, went to school at Texas Tech University. In 2005, graduated, moved from Lubbock, Texas to New York City. Cows and cotton to the concrete jungle. And I wanted to compete with the best of the best in advertising. So that's why I moved. My major was advertising. That's why I moved to New York City. Worked on Madison Avenue, was making $30,000 as a college graduate. And, my rent at the time was $775, I believe. So my check every 2 weeks was about $750. So half of it went to rent and the other half, went to student loans and living and that sort of thing.
So you were broke.
I was broke. Yeah. Yes, yeah. I definitely was broke. And I actually moved to East Flatbush, Brooklyn, which at the time it was the busiest police precinct in all the 5 boroughs in New York City. I did not know that at the time. So it was eye-opening, and I climbed the corporate ladder relatively quickly in advertising. I went from a junior project manager making $30,000 to a vice president of a New York City advertising agency before my 30th birthday. And I was making $150,000, not plus a bonus. So as I was climbing the corporate ladder, I was beginning to make some money. And I think an important part of my story is while I was making money along the way, I kept my living expenses relatively fixed, which is important, especially if you're living in New York City. So all of my friends made fun of me when I was once I got to vice president level. They're like, dude, you're still living in your same apartment. And by the way, I had moved to East Village. So I lived in the same apartment for 9 years in East Village in Manhattan, which is a nice area.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
But they made fun of me. They said, you have a roommate from Craigslist, and which is a whole nother story. We don't have time for that.
Yeah. You would end up with a guy like Brandon if you tried that, which is scary enough.
I had a lot of Craigslist roommates.
Did you? Yeah. I did it.
Sorry for all of them.
Oh yeah. And so my apartment consisted of 2 bedrooms, a hallway, and a bathroom. No living room. I had a dorm style refrigerator. At the time, I was like 31 years old. I'm 34 now. And so, my friends were like, "Why are you living like a college kid?" And I said, well, number one, I really don't care about upgrading my lifestyle to a larger apartment and then having paying more in rent. And number two, with that money that I'm saving, at the time I was buying single family homes in Texas where I'm from. And they were intrigued by that, but no one really picked up what I was doing and actually did it along with me. And so I think that's something that's different from my story, is that I was able to save money along the way and able to handle the ridicule that I know, that was coming to me, and was able to save money and buy my first house in 2000.
Nice, Joe. Well, so first of all, like that's New York for you. Sadly, like I grew up there, and New York is literally a place, New York City in particular, where life is about money. It's literally that people live to make more money so that they could show off the money that they have to other people to feel good about themselves and how much money they have. Now, obviously I'm speaking in broad generalizations, but like that's the environment. I grew up in it. It's crazy. And I totally get it. How did you decide to start buying those homes in Texas? Why did you decide to start buying those homes in Texas? I get the frugality, I get being smart with money, but why say, you know what, I'm gonna start buying these houses back home in Texas?
When I was 26 years old, so about 3-4 years after I graduated, I was eventually at that point, I was probably making $60,000 or so, and I was able to save some money. And I remember I had $1,000 in my bank account, savings account rather, that I could invest. And I didn't know anything about investing. And so I happened to go into my bank, and I think it was Bank of America. Yeah, Bank of America. And they had something called a CD, which I hadn't heard of before. So I had to do research on it. And I ended up putting my only $1,000 that I had in my savings account into the CD, and they held it hostage for 12 very, very, very long months. And then at the end of it, I got $16, and then I got taxed on the $16.
That's great, man. That's a really good return. What are you talking about? You have a problem? I mean, they didn't hold it hostage. They protected that money from spending it somewhere else.
Yeah, they helped me be more fiscally responsible.
Yeah, so it's called a forced hostagehood.
Yeah. So then I realized, there had to be another approach. So I read the book Investing for Dummies, which was really influential for me. And in that book, they talk about 3 different ways to invest. 1 is stocks and bonds, 2 is investing in LLCs, and 3 is investing in real estate. And I just gravitated towards real estate. And then I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then there's kind of just a snowball effect from there. And I recognized that real estate was the way I wanted to go.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So let's talk about that first deal. You're in New York. You decide I'm going to go and buy a single family house. How'd it go? How'd it go down?
Well, I bought it. I bought the house for $76,000. It was in 2009. And by the way, I just lucked out that I didn't have money until 2009. If I had money in 2007, then I probably would. This would be a different type of interview. But I bought in 2009 when prices were very low in Dallas in particular. And I ended up saving, $20,000 all in. The down payment is 20% down, so $14,000 plus closing costs. I was all in about $20,000. It is about 15. It's in Duncanville, Texas. For anyone familiar with Dallas Fort Worth, it's about 15 minutes south of Dallas. The interesting thing about this property and all the homes I've purchased, I don't buy homes anymore, but all the homes I purchased, is that I've never actually visited the house before I bought it. personally, I've never visited the house before I bought it. And that's pretty unique, I believe, for buying your first rental property. And maybe or maybe not, I would recommend it. I don't know. But here's how I got around it. I had a real estate agent take pictures and also do video walkthroughs of the property. And I also recognize that I have maybe a couple special talents and then a lot of things that I'm not that good at. And one of the things I'm not that good at is construction and identifying, doing a property condition assessment. That's just not a strength of mine. So even if I had visited the property, I don't know how much value I would have added. So my approach for that first single family home was to have my real estate agent go around, take a video, give me a sense of the property. And then because I am from Dallas, Fort Worth, I know the area incredibly well. So just by seeing the property address, I know if the school district's a good school district. So I was familiar with the market, but the house, I figured I'd get it under contract and then have an inspector go through it, pay a couple $100, and then get an inspection report and see if there's anything that was a deal breaker or not. Because on the surface, it looked pretty good. And that's how I approached it.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think a lot of people get this feeling that you have to invest in your own backyard. And I mean, even here on the podcast, and I've recommended it, you should look in your own area. But if you live in New York City or you live in San Francisco, it might just not be possible to do that. Now, we usually recommend maybe drive a couple hours, find a lower price market. But like you said, you knew Dallas. You had an unfair advantage, like we like to say. You had an unfair advantage there in that you knew the market really, really well. And so I think that's awesome that you did that. I know a number of people. In fact, I just hung out with my buddy David Green last week, and he's the guy who invests. He lives in San Francisco, invests in Florida, and I think in Arizona. He doesn't go look at most of the properties he buys. He has somebody else do the walkthrough, and he invests areas where he knows the market really well, where he has an unfair advantage. So I think that's very cool. Do you have any tips for people right now, like that are listening to this show that want to do that? Like, what would you tell them kind of the first steps to do if they want to start buying a single family house or two out of state? What should they do?
Well, I think you've got to have the right on-the-ground people who you trust. And the best way to do that is, one is through BiggerPockets, because you can simply look people up, see how much they've posted, how many votes they have, because that is a good indication of how much value they're providing to the community. Yeah. And then you can reach out to them. That's a simple, very practical thing to do. Once you reach out to them, first off, know what you're looking for, and know what is and isn't a good deal to you. If you don't know that, then perhaps don't reach out to people yet. Know how you're going to run your numbers and how you're going to qualify a deal. That way you're prepared when you do find that individual on the ground, to brief them on exactly what you're looking for. And then it's super. I don't want to trivialize how the different things that go into buying a house, but for me, it was pretty simple. I just found a real estate agent. I had the money, the down payment saved up. I had the lender lined up, and I looked at a bunch of listings. One thing, and again, I haven't bought a house in about 4 years, so I'm not super sharp on this stuff.
Sure.
But one thing I remember looking at is I initially got a bunch of listings from the agent, and he said, "Well, how do these places look?" And I said, "I have no clue because I don't know how much they rent for." And I said, in order for me to determine if it's a good purchase or not, in addition to sending me the listings, please send me what you think the places will rent for. That way I can simply run the numbers. And all I was looking for in my single family homes was something that was making at least $100 a month. I had $10,000 in equity at closing compared to sales comps, and it was less than $1,000 move-in ready. Now, that criteria certainly isn't the most value add type of opportunity that I could do. And as I've become more experienced and well-versed in real estate, I recognize that the bigger dollars are in the value add opportunities. But right out of the gate, as a single family home buyer and a first time investor, I was just looking for something that was kind of cookie cutter. And when I told the real estate agent that, he said, "Okay, great." And I said, "Here are some things I'm not looking for. I'm not looking for anything with the pool. not looking for anything with a large backyard. I had a bunch of things. And the reason why no pool is because maintenance stuff and liability. The reason why no large backyard is because I know for tax purposes, if the property takes up the majority of the lot, then I can depreciate the improvement or that house much more than, or depreciate the improvement of that house on taxes much more than just the vacant land. So I wanted a house to eat up the majority of the lot and some other things like that. I mentioned it to him, and that's, I just went out and looked at the things, looked at the properties virtually. And so those would be the steps I'd recommend.
That's hey, Joe, really quick. The 10K a month, 10K equity at closing. That's in the list of those
$100 a month, 10K.
100 months. Sorry, yeah. Whoops, sorry.
10K a month. That'd be a great.
Woo, yeah, that'd be awesome. So those are your criteria, and I just want to emphasize for anybody listening who's new, it's really important before you get started to figure out what your criteria are. You really want to know what kind of properties you're going to get in. What are those numbers? And it may be very different for you. There may not be a monthly cash flow number. There may be only an equity at closing number. There may be only something else. Nobody can tell you what's right or wrong. You kind of have to figure that out for yourself. But it's important that you actually figure out what are your criteria and stick to those numbers. That's where most people really get it wrong, is they get emotionally attached to properties and they fudge their criteria, and they always rue the day. They always regret, oh man, I should have stuck to my numbers, I should have stuck to this. So I just wanted to kind of pass it along.
Yeah, and by investing virtually, I wasn't emotionally connected to any one property because I never visited the property, which is one benefit of doing it virtually.
Yeah. Well, so if that's a benefit of doing it virtually, what's the danger in doing it virtually?
You don't have the right team and you buy something that is in a bad area and you don't know the area. Maybe you don't look on Google Maps that it's across the street from a cemetery.
Yep.
Maybe there's the neighbor has a big old boat that they always park out front and a big above ground pool in their front yard, and that doesn't show up, and you can't rent it out because the neighbors are kind of unruly. There, you might not get a good inspection report, and you don't know that you didn't because you're like, wait a second, I saw that there literally was no flooring in the kitchen. It was a big hole, but that's not an inspection report. You wouldn't know that if you didn't visit the property. I mean, pros and cons. I mean, just with any approach we take, the pro, in addition to what I was already mentioned, the pro is also I wasn't flying from New York City to Dallas anytime we looked at a property. Yeah. I was, it was saving a tremendous amount of time. But as with any business, if you start outsourcing stuff, you're going to give up control and you're going to increase the likelihood that mistakes might happen. And you just kind of got to optimize the process as you go along the way.
Yeah.
There you go. I love that. So you said you're no longer doing single family houses. Can you first explain why that is? And then, what came next? What was your next non-single family property?
The reason why I'm not doing single family homes is because I went to a Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar. It was one of the 3-day seminars. And I paid like a couple $100 to go to it. And I went in, my chest sticking out and feeling pretty cocky because I had 2 single family homes at the time. And I went in and I sat down, and the first thing they said was, you're not going to get rich buying single family homes because it takes too long to scale. Now, I don't believe that now, because I have interviewed people who have gotten, and rich is subjective, who have become financially independent. Their income has covered their expenses through single family homes. So I don't necessarily believe or agree with that now. However, I did at the time, and it resonated with me. I was like, wait, you're right, because I've got a house, 2 of them, and they're making me about $250 a month. And then when a tenant moves out or a resident moves out, I then get a $5,000 bill, and that wipes out my profit for basically 2 years from the rentals. Something is not right, because I'm going to have to scale big time. And then I was getting my insurance payments that I was having to do. I was having to renew every 12 months, and I was having to mail in the check, and I detest mailing things. And it was just piling up. I was like, there's got to be a different way. So the two things they said, multifamily or mobile home trailer parks. And I just gravitated towards multifamily. So immediately thereafter, I started studying multifamily, and that coincided with me becoming apathetic towards my full-time job. You know, I'm a huge Tony Robbins fan, and he talks about the 6 human needs, and I won't go into all 6 of them, but the last 2 lead to fulfillment. That's growth and contribution. So if we don't feel like we're growing and we don't feel like we're contributing in a meaningful way, then we won't be fulfilled. And I just didn't feel like I was growing or contributing in a meaningful way in my advertising job. Therefore, I was going to leave. I decided to leave in December of 2012. So I realized, well, I won't prove for a mortgage if I leave my job for a house. So the other way to do it, as I've been reading about this apartment stuff, is that I can go in with other people who do have full-time jobs, and I can buy something together with them, and we can share in the profits, and I'll oversee the thing. And so it was a combination of those factors where I decided, okay, now I'm going to make the jump from single family to multifamily.
Got it. So how many houses, was it after 2 houses then that 4. You had jumped? Oh, it was 4 houses. Okay, cool. So, all right, I'm ready. I'm going to get into multifamily. What now? Like, what do you do? How do you get over that hump? You know, it's a fundamental leap in the mindset, I think, for a lot of people to go from houses to multifamilies. So I'd love to hear about that shift for you, and then love to hear about the first deal.
Yeah. Blissful ignorance is how you go into it.
Yeah.
You don't know, you don't know what you're getting
Brandon's
into.
Motto.
Until you get into it. So what I did is while I was in my advertising job, I was also teaching a class in person in New York City on how to buy single family homes remotely. And the reason why is because what I was mentioning earlier, a bunch of my advertising friends are like, wait, you got a house? I thought you were an advertiser. What do you mean? How do you have a house? And it's in Texas? And so I started teaching a class on that. And my oldest brother's friend, after I'd been teaching for about a year, my oldest brother's friend reached out to me, and he's a gym owner. He owns some gyms in Dallas-Fort Worth area. And he said, you know, I heard you are investing in real estate. I'd like to, do you have that presentation that you do in the class? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll send it to you. So I sent it to him, and he said, you know, this looks great, but I'm looking to go larger. So if you ever do something larger, let me know. And I thought, interesting. And I heard that from a couple people, and I thought, wait a second, do I have clients? Do I have customers before I have a product? And that's the best business you can be in. When you have customers before you have a product, then you know you're on to something. Yeah. And so I knew that I had some people who were interested in partnering with me. And so I started, I read a bunch of books, pretty much, I mean, not every book, but I'd say 80% of the books that you can think of on apartments I've read. I started shadowing some people who are multifamily investors. And I got incredibly active on BiggerPockets. You can tell if you saw my posting history in that time frame. I mean, I was posting left and right. I was wanting to learn as much as possible, and I used BiggerPockets as a tool to help me learn the multifamily business and make friends and reach out to people and learn how the heck are they doing it in their market. So once I got the foundation of the knowledge, then you go apply it. And so I went to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I wasn't planning on going to Tulsa. I was like, you know what? I was buying these single family homes, just talking to a real estate agent, and he was finding the property, sending me deals, and I bought them. easy. I'm going to do the same thing with multifamily.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way, because again, I thought since I had 4 single family homes, shoot, they take me serious. I live in New York City. I got 4 homes, and I'm telling them I want to invest in multifamily. They're just going to show me all their off-market deals. Didn't work that way. I didn't get any deals from this the broker group and brokers that I reached out to in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I had identified Tulsa through various economic indicators. And so I took a trip to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and when I went there, we made offers on about 8 or 9 deals, not at the same time, but consecutively. One said no, didn't work. Then we went to another, didn't get any of them. But at the time, I was also making a friend in Tulsa. He's a real estate developer in Tulsa and other markets. And he connected me to a broker who showed me a deal in Cincinnati. And I'd never been to Cincinnati. Maybe I drove through when I was young, but I'd never actually been there as an adult. So I was like, well, let me qualify the deal first, which usually I qualify the market first. But let me qualify the deal first, and then I'll go visit the market. And that's how I came across my first opportunity.
So I want to ask, how do you qualify a market? You had talked about various indicators that told you that Tulsa was a good market to be in. What were those indicators? What would somebody look for if they're trying to decide on a market for properties like this?
I mean, ultimately, when we're qualifying a market, we want to make sure that people will be able to pay rent to us so we can cover our expenses and make the cash flow. That's what it boils down to. That's the end result. So how do we get to that point?
Yeah.
We get to that point to make sure we make sure that the employment base is strong and it's diverse. And then the third factor, and I'll elaborate a little bit on each of these 3, the third factor is supply and demand. Because even if the employment base is strong and it's diverse, if there's 1 million apartments and 3 renters, then you're going to be in trouble. So you want to look at supply and demand. Those are the main 3 factors. I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, certainly from a sub-market standpoint, so drilling in deeper on the area, what's around, what type of school district is it, what type of community development is there, where's the path of progress. There are other things, but from a very practical level, so for anyone listening who wants to look for good multifamily markets, you look for unemployment. You see how it's trending. You compare that to the national average. You look at employment diversity. So you want to make sure that no one employer makes up more than 15-20% of all jobs, and no one industry makes up more than 15-20% of all the jobs. You can easily look that up on a Bureau of Labor and Statistics. You could easily look that up on the city's Wikipedia page, and then scroll down to the bottom, and you'll be able to click on the resource reference links at the bottom, and then find where they're getting their sources, and then make sure that those are valid sources. And then supply and demand, that's a little trickier if you don't have access to CoStar or a database like that. So perhaps talk to your real estate agent or property manager who you're working with in that market, and they should have access to absorption rates in that market. So how many people are able to rent versus how many apartments are there, and plus how many apartments are there that are coming online. So existing plus coming online, and looking at that compared to how many people are renting. Those are the 3 factors that I look at.
Awesome.
Hey, can I ask a question? And again, I don't want you to give away your secrets here, but
I'll give them away.
There's no secrets in real estate.
Well, what I mean is, are there markets that you would recommend, maybe or maybe not recommend, but things that you're looking at, things that you see strong right now that you've been looking at and saying, hey, that's a pretty decent market.
By the way, Brandon has no personal interest
no
involved
personal
in this
interest
question
at all
at all.
in this question. No, I have no reason to ask this question.
Well, I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm from Dallas-Fort Worth area. Fort Worth, Texas was rated number 1. Not a lot of people know this. Rated number 1 in population increase from 2000 to 2015 by the Census Bureau. And so the population is growing tremendously in Fort Worth. especially North Fort Worth. North Dallas and North Fort Worth are growing. North Dallas probably isn't groundbreaking news to anyone, but Fort Worth and north of Fort Worth is. And in addition to the population increasing, and by the way, it's projected to continue to increase. I mean, the Fort Worth area, I feel like is getting the same, isn't getting as much attention as Dallas, but it's getting the same type of job growth and winning the same amount of new companies being headquartered there as Dallas is. So I'm really big on Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
Awesome.
Cool. Good to know. I'll start looking. I mean, our people will start looking at our listeners. All right.
What did I say? Did that come out?
Yeah. So let's skip ahead a little bit and kind of get a big summary of where you're at right now. And then we'll backtrack and get your story more.
Yeah.
Like, how many total deals have you done now, or how many units do you have? How much do you where are you at right now?
I've got $130 million worth of apartment communities. My business partner and I, with our investors, have $130 million worth of apartment communities. That's based on purchase price. So it's worth more than that, but that's just it's easy way to think about it. And that is a little under 2,000 units. Additionally, we have 2 properties under contract. We're going to close by the end of June. And at that time, we'll have about 2,400 units that we.
So you're just getting started. I see. You're
just getting started, baby. I go. Yeah, absolutely.
What is your goal? I mean, what are you trying to get to?
My goal is $1 billion of apartment communities by the time I'm 40. I'm 34. My birthday's in a month, so I'm basically 35. So in 5 years, and it's important to note that I drive a 2012 Toyota Corolla. So for me, it's not about the money. It is about, I mean, I truly am a minimalist. When my fiance and I buy something, we give away something to Goodwill. So I hate stuff. I hate collecting stuff. So it's for me, it's not about the money. It's more about when we have $1 billion worth of properties, then we will have created $1 billion worth of value. And, as real estate investors, fix and flippers, especially, I mean, that's something that really helps the community, with the job creation locally and employing a lot of people that probably the fix and flippers don't even know they have a ripple effect on. And that's the same thought process with the $1 billion of apartment communities in about five years and a month.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So, all right. So 130 million, 2,000 units, you're adding 400 units over 2 more properties. Let's talk about that first property, that first apartment complex. It sounds like you picked it up in Ohio. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So give us the numbers and how did you put it all together? Right. So it sounds like you had a couple people who had some cash. I'm assuming you were the guy who found the deal. How'd you find it? What it looked like? And then how did it kind of all come together?
Yeah. So I ended up, I mentioned a couple of people who had shown interest in partnering with me, and I ended up, it definitely was a character building experience. That's what I like to call it. And when you're raising money for the first time on a deal, I mean, it's very challenging. And I'll tell you the way I did it, and then I'll tell you the way that I do it now, and I recommend others do it, because I don't recommend doing it the way I did it originally. The way I did it originally is I found the deal, and then I look for the money. And that's not the approach to take with large multifamily. Single family or wholesaling, I get it. You can find the deal, and then the money will come. But when you're raising, in my case, I raised over $1 million on my first deal. When you're raising that amount of money, you really need to be prepared and have your ducks in a row prior to finding an opportunity. And when I say you need to have the money lined up, I want to be clear. I'm not saying have money from investors transferred to an escrow account prior to finding a deal. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying verbal interest in investing with you, and then you've got that verbal interest. Yeah, so you should have 30% more than what you think you need committed. And when I say committed, it shouldn't be money transferring to an escrow account. It should be simply a verbal interest in your deal or in what you're doing. And then when you do have a deal, you'll be able to reach out to those individuals, and there's going to be some attrition with the individuals who had shown interest in what you're in the deal. So you've got to anticipate that, and that's why you need 30% more than what you think you need. So to answer your question directly now that I kind of laid that foundation, how it went out, or how it happened was I reached out to a lot of people who I knew, and eventually 12 of them invested. I had 2 of them, or about $200,000, back out a couple weeks before we were supposed to close. And I didn't have a backup plan, but fortunately one of my investors went larger in the deal, and he covered the difference. And it was a creative deal. It was actually a master lease deal. So what that allowed me to do is not have to get approved for a mortgage or by the lender, because I didn't have the net worth or liquidity to get approved for the loan. So one thing when we talk about master leases is if you'll hear that they're really good strategy for buying real estate or taking control rather of real estate, and it's true, but it's important to know what the downsides are as well, or the potential pitfalls, because not a lot of people who do master leases actually give you the full picture. So the full picture is with a master lease, which, by the way, a master lease is basically you are leasing it from the current owner, and you're taking over all of the income. So you receive all the income, but you also have to pay all of the expenses, including the debt service or the mortgage. So the reason why master leases would be good, and then I'll tell you the things to watch out for. The reason why they could be good for you is because you can identify owners who have, especially now with interest rates relatively low, who have recently refinanced to get into a new lower interest rate opportunity or new lower interest rate loan. But then maybe a life circumstance happens with them. Maybe there's a death in the family. Maybe they just want to abruptly retire, whatever it is. Well, most likely they have a prepayment penalty on that new loan that they just put on the deal. So because there's a prepayment penalty, they are not going to be able to exit out of the deal without a large sum of money going to the lender. A way to get around that is a master lease, where you're taking over the current loan and you're paying the expenses and you receive income. Now, here's the thing to watch out for. You'll want to read the loan document that the seller has with their lender, because it might say something to the effect of you can't do a master lease. Mm-hmm. And if you do a master lease, then you're in default. They might be in default of the loan. They might call the loan due. And that can be a big time problem because especially if you're raising money and you don't have the money to pay off the loan, should they call the loan, you'll be in hot water if they call the note due, because you're going to have to find the money to pay off the balance. And so I actually delayed closing 2 weeks because I needed something in writing from the lender that said they were approving this transaction. And that's something that I'd say 99% of people who do master leases don't get, is approval from the lender. Yeah. And I think you're playing with fire if you don't do that, especially on a large multifamily deal.
Well, how many lenders are okay with that? I mean, is that a thing that lenders are okay with?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I know this lender was, and the reason why this lender was is let's look at it from their perspective. They are still keeping the seller as a personal guarantor on the loan.
Yep.
So the seller is still on the loan. They're still responsible for the loan, and they still have their collateral, which is the property plus the personal. In this case, there's a personal guarantee from the seller. And in addition to that, if the seller is strong enough and they see future business opportunities with the seller, then they're going to do what they need to in order to make sure they're happy so that they do more business with them.
Yeah, right on. Hey,
sense.
Joe, how does it work from the seller's perspective? So I own this property. You come to me and say, hey, you want to do this master lease? How do I get paid? What do I get paid? You're getting all the cash flow and the liability. I'm still on the hook, it sounds like, for everything. So that kind of sucks maybe.
Yeah.
But what do I get for it?
Well, you get the down payment. The short answer is you get what you negotiate. So here's a couple things that you could get. You could get a down payment, and in this specific scenario, they got a down payment of a little over $1 million. So there's incentive, because if they didn't do the master lease, they would have had to sell the property, and then there was $1 million prepayment penalty on the property. So it hurt the numbers. You could also, and they didn't get this in my scenario, but you could get as a lessee or leasee. I don't know what the terminology is, but the seller could get a monthly stipend
Like
for
a royalty.
royalty for maybe just whatever you negotiate. There's a couple different ways, but primarily it's the down payment. There's another thing where maybe the seller carries back some money. So even though you bought it for a certain amount, you don't pay all of them up front, the money. So you could give them interest on their whatever they carried back, but primarily a down payment.
So in your case, you acquired the property through this master lease with the seller. You gave them the down payment, the $1 million. They're still on the hook for the property. How do they get off the hook for the property? It's got to be at a sale, correct?
You betcha. Yeah, a sale, or you assign your rights to purchase to someone else, and then they buy the property from them. And that's in our case, that's what we did. We assigned our rights to another entity, and then they bought the property, and then everyone exits at that point in time.
Got it.
So if you assigned the deal to somebody else, how did you make money on that? Besides, it was just the cash flow in the meantime?
Oh no, you make the difference. When you enter into this release agreement, you say, I'm going to buy this property in 3, 5 years, 2 years, whatever it is, at this particular amount. And then when you assign your interest to exercise that option purchase, say you buy it, say you are going to buy it for $300,000. If you assign it for $350,000, then you will have made the cash flow along the way plus that $50,000 spread.
Okay, very cool.
Got it.
So is that, like, can we talk numbers on that first deal? What did you buy it for? What did you end up, like, what was the average cash flow? Like, was it a really home run deal, or what was that like?
Wait, but before that, really quickly, sure. You said, sorry, Brandon, I just think it's really important. You said you put together money from all these people. Like, I can't just say, hey, Brandon, give me $500,000. Joe, give me $600,000. Frank's mom gives me, another $500,000. I can't just put all that together and put it in a contract and move forward, can I? Or how does all that work?
Yeah. So thank you for mentioning that. That's a good point. A couple things. One is, to directly answer your question, you do it through a securities attorney, and you put together a document called a PPM, a private placement memorandum. It also includes an operating agreement. So the PPM basically tells them how they can lose all of their money in the deal. It's a very scary 130-page document. Yep. The operating agreement is a typical operating agreement that most real estate investors are familiar with. It shows who's in the deal. Well, the PPM shows that too, but who gets paid and what the order of priority is, and upon sale, upon cash flow, etc., voting rights, etc. There's also a subscription agreement. So what the investors subscribe or invest into the entity that has the property. So that's the third thing. The fourth is an investor qualifier form. And that if you're taking only accredited investors, so people who make $200K a year for the last couple of years with a reasonable expectation to make it this year, or $300 jointly with their spouse, or $1 million net worth, or some other obscure things, There are other ways to qualify them, more obscure. Then they fill that out to prove that they are accredited. So those are the four primary things. The fifth thing that we put in there is how they will receive their monthly distributions, just so we don't have to collect that information later. So you have a securities attorney put that together. Those are the 5 components: the PPM, the operating agreement, the subscription agreement, the investor qualifier, and how they're going to receive their distributions. Now, practically speaking, for someone who has real estate experience and is looking to bring in investors, the way that I was able to bring in investors is I identified the different networks that I was a part of. So Texas Tech Alumni Advisory Board, I had been on that for 5-6 years. I still am. My advertising agency friends. I had someone on my flag football team invest with me. He only knew me because he was on my flag football team. And roommates, not the Craigslist, actually one Craigslist roommate, plus some roommates in college. So what I recommend doing, here's a practical tip for anyone listening, is identify the different networks that you're a part of. And then put them in a spreadsheet, put the individuals' names in a spreadsheet. And then your goal is to reach out to one person within each of those networks and have a conversation and see if it's a good fit with them. If so, then talk to other people in that same network and name check that you spoke to so-and-so. Because the number one influencer of purchase intent, I know this from my advertising days, is word of mouth referrals. That's the number one influencer of purchase intent is word of mouth referrals. So if you say, hey, Josh, I know Brandon and I were talking. He was showing interest in this deal. We thought you might be as well. I mean, Josh, you might say hell no, not if Brandon's in it.
Well, yeah, that's probably the case. Yeah.
Right. But other people might say, yeah, I'm interested as well. And then you go about it that way. And I can tell you that that specific example worked for me on my deal, and that brought in the largest investor that I had on my deal because he said, oh, and this guy's happened to name Brandon. Oh, well, if Brandon's in the deal, then I know he's fiscally responsible. So sure, yeah, I'll take a look at it.
I love that. I love that.
That's great.
You know you would invest with me, Josh. Come on.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
all right. Hey, Joe, really quick, one last thing before Brandon throws a bunch of questions at you that are probably meaningless. But what is all that cost? So you pay the securities attorney. I mean, that's a lot of paperwork to generate. So, just the attorney's costs on that first deal or subsequent deals, I'm sure it's más o menos same price. What are we talking about here?
$50,000.
Wow. $50,000 to put together all this paperwork.
Yeah, I mean, and you can you do get it paid at closing after you close the deal. Now there are other resources that you can use that are less expensive. I mean, you can get a PPM drafted for probably like $6,000-$7,000. But I'm talking about the negotiations with that your attorneys are, or the attorneys that are reviewing the contracts, in addition to putting together the securities documents and the operating agreement, all in conservatively $50,000. I can tell you for that first deal, it was about $10,000, but I cut corners, and I don't recommend cutting corners. If I had to do it on a shoestring budget and not cut corners, I could probably get it done through a different attorney that I use for probably all in $15,000. But we go with one that we're comfortable with and we know has everything buttoned up.
And that like you said, it comes out of closing. So essentially, if you're raising money for these deals, you're raising $1 million. I mean, it adds $50,000 to the $1 million you need, and then the investors are kind of paying that anyway. Or do you pay that out of your pocket? Are you paying that $50,000?
It comes from investors plus Joe and Frank, my business partners' funds.
Okay. All right. And so how much money are you usually putting into these deals? I mean, are you usually invested in every one, or are you doing no money of your own?
Yeah, we invest in every one of our deals. The first deal, I didn't have any money to put in. But then since I partnered with my business partner, Frank, and we have Ashcroft Capital, we put in at minimum $100,000 in every one of our deals.
Okay,
Got
that's
it.
awesome. And that also helps. When you're telling investors, "Hey, I'm putting my money in this."
You have to. You have to. It's a no-brainer. Yeah. I mean,
awesome.
you have to have alignment of interest.
Very, very cool. So, are you still doing these master lease options on deals today? Or are you mostly doing just purchases?
Yeah, that was just to get going.
Okay.
And I don't do that. Now, it's not something I'm opposed to, but it just makes more sense to put new debt on the property. So with Ashcroft Capital, our first deal was a 250 unit, and for all of our deals, we put new financing on it. Haven't done anything really creatively other than get off-market deals.
Okay. Well,
What is Ashcroft? Is that you and your partner's entity, or is that?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Very cool.
Okay,
Where'd the name come from?
I don't know. I have a house on Ashcroft Circle in Texas, but I don't know where the name came from.
Yeah, funny. All right. So how you talked about finding off-market deals, or does that mean that is all your deals off-market, or how do you find apartment complexes to buy?
Well, really interesting story, and this is applicable to every single real estate investor who is looking to invest in a hot market, and find off-market deals. So here's the story. This happens to be the last two apartment communities we closed on, over 500 units in Dallas, Texas, about a month and a half ago. And here's what happened. We saw a 300 plus unit property that was being marketed by a broker, and we liked it, but it kept getting bid up and up and up and up as they were doing their job. They were promoting the property and trying to get the highest and best offer for their client, the seller. And so we noticed that we weren't going to be able to buy it unless we had a different variable in play. And so my business partner had the idea to look across the street. And across the street, there was another apartment community. And the one that was being marketed, the 300 plus units, it was 90% one bedrooms. And the one across the street, a 250 plus unit apartment community, had primarily 2 and 3 bedroom units. And so what he did is he reached out to our broker that we use, and that broker happened to have a relationship with that owner across the street. And so we were able to get both of those deals under contract, the on-market deal and the off-market deal. And together, there are economies of scale. So we use the same manager. We have a maintenance crew that goes back and forth. And more importantly, or as important, those properties play off of each other, because one is primarily one bedroom. Since the concrete jungle, there's really no green space. And across the street, you got a 2 and 3 bedroom, lots of acreage, etc. And we were able to pay market value for the 300 unit because we were packaging it in with the 250 unit that we were paying below market value. So the whole project, we were paying a little bit below market, but we're able to operate it at a level that no other buyer could operate the first property at, because they weren't owning both.
Wow, that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's very clever.
So the takeaway for anyone listening is, if you're in a hot market and you see a deal that you like, then also look across the street and see if you can package those deals together, and then go in with a competitive offer for both and use economies of scale with operations.
But there was no advantage to the initial seller. Like, the economies of scale didn't necessarily benefit them. They just benefit you because you were able to get that second deal and use the economies of scale to reduce your OpEx, right? I mean, you're not offering anything better to the seller, are you? What am I missing?
To the seller of the 300 unit?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we paid basically market price for that property.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
they got the price they wanted, and it worked for you because you got the economies of scale, because you got both. Yeah,
Exactly.
Makes sense.
it's clever.
Makes
I like
sense.
it a lot.
Hey, Joe, really quick. I want to jump back, and then we'll come forward. So sorry, I hate to do this, but a question popped in my head here, which is, you talked about investing $100K minimum on your deals. So let's take this property, and I don't know if you're allowed to share it or not, but how are you making money? You personally are putting $100K in. Presumably your investors are getting paid first. Let's say you put up, I don't know, 5% of the deal. What's your take? How do you find the property, you're operating it, presumably. How do you actually get paid?
3 primary ways. One is acquisition fee, 2% of the purchase price. 2 is asset management fee, 2% of the collected income every month. And then 3 is for most deals, we do 8% preferred return and 70-30 split thereafter.
They get 70, you get 30.
Investors.
Yeah, they get limited partners 70, which I also am a limited partner because I'm investing alongside with them. Okay, but general partnership 30%. So we put in 100,000, and if the raise is 10 million, then that 100 doesn't equal 30%. So we're able to get that difference between what we put in and the 30%.
Okay, so you get 2% of purchase, 2% of collected income, 30% of everything above that, and you're after what?
After the preferred return.
After preferred return, and then the preferred return. What was the rate on that?
Usually, it's been 8%. So we'll just say 8. Usually it's 8.
Cool.
So in other words, so to take this into, if people are confused by that, let's say I'm a private investor and I want to invest with you, Joe, and I say, okay, here's $1 million. I'm going to give you $1 million. I get preferred return. Correct me if I'm wrong. I get my 8% before you get your 70-30, but you get the 2% acquisition fee and the income for sure. Then we take the rest and make sure that I get my 8%. And if I don't get it, then you don't get your 70-30, right? I mean, that's a good definition.
Yeah, that's correct. The only clarification point is, and this is a little bit different for us than the industry standard, we don't collect asset management fees, so that 2% I mentioned earlier, unless we're paying the 8% preferred return.
Okay. That's cool.
We put that behind the investor preferred return.
Very cool.
To have more alignment of interest.
Yeah.
And last question I got before maybe we move on to the fire round is what do you look for in terms of these deals from metrics? Are you, if anything, just makes you a certain amount per month? Are you looking for a certain overall return for your investors, an IRR, or how do you look at that?
Yeah, at least an 18% internal rate of return on a 5-year sale. So we have it for 5 years, and then we sell it at year 5. We want to our limited partners, to our investors, we want to have at least an 18% internal rate of return.
That's fantastic. And so is there a deal where, is there an amount that you want to personally make? Hey, I want $1 million in profit on a deal. Do you have any kind of numbers like that or no?
No, as long as the investors have the 18% and the project is projected to do 22-23%, then we're all going to make money.
Okay, yeah.
Cool.
And sorry, last question. Are all these value add opportunities? In other words, is every property you buy something that you can fix up and increase the rent, lower the expenses?
Every single property, what we buy, it's really straightforward. We buy 150 plus unit properties that are B class, stabilized, so they're cash flowing, but have value add components and are 1980s or newer.
Cool.
I love that. I love that you have that strict criteria. So somebody asks you, hey, what's up? In fact, I had a guy recently, Jeff Woods, from he does the One Thing podcast, right? He mentioned the other day this, not to me, but to a friend of mine who mentioned me. Anyway, this idea, when somebody says, hey, how you doing, man? When you respond with, I'm doing great, you're giving up a massive opportunity. Instead, I'm trying to change my mentality now. Someone says, hey, how you doing? I'm doing pretty good. I'm looking for a 100-unit mobile home park. That's what right? Every conversation, you're wasting it if all you say is, I'm doing good. What are you doing? Anyway, that's great. Plug for Jeff Woods and the One Thing podcast. But anyway, nice. So I like that you have that criteria. Hey, I'm looking for a 150 unit plus Class B 1980s stabilized property. You know anything?
Hey, can you explain what stabilized is for people who don't know?
Yeah, it's 85% or above economic occupancy, and that's an important distinction. It's not just occupancy. There's a difference between physical occupancy and economic occupancy. Physical, people who are living there. Economic, people who are paying to live there. So at least 85% economic occupancy.
Big difference. Yeah. Awesome. Last question for me before we go to the fire round is this. I know you had talked about pulling these two deals together. I don't know that we actually got the answer to the question on how are you finding the deals. So how did that initial deal actually come to you, and the two deals that you're going to be closing on, how did you find those? So how are you actually finding these properties that you're evaluating?
It's either on market deals that we're getting the email just like everyone else who's listening is getting the email, or off market deals. And I'd say, we have 8 apartment communities. And I'm going to include these other 2 that we're buying. So 10 total. And I'd say it's 60-40, 60% off market deals. And I'll explain that in a second. And 40% on market deals that were publicized to the public. So the off-market deals, the 60% of our deals, they are found through a broker relationship. So we still pay the broker fee, but that broker only shares it with us first. And then because they know we'll close, and the incentive. So the question might become, well, I understand why the broker would do it, because they do less work. They don't have to create a long offer memorandum. They don't have to handle, 40 different tours at the property. They don't have to field all these questions. But why would the owner agree to do an off-market deal instead of just promoting it publicly? And there's a couple reasons. One is that we're not stealing the deals by any means. We're not paying 20 cents on the dollar. We're paying a competitive price, but we're also paying on the off-market deals below market, but it's very close. And the benefit to them is that, one, they're getting a close to market price, but then 2, that they can go with a seller in a much shorter amount of time than they would if they had to go through the formal process.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like I don't know, I'm continually challenged by everything you're saying. Like, man, I need to do this differently. I need to do this differently. I need to do this differently. This is good. I love conversations like this, because I'm continually reminded of things that I can improve on and change my own business. So very, very cool. I mean, this has been awesome, but we're not quite done, because next.
Yeah, great stuff, Joe.
Yeah, we're gonna shift gears here and head over to the world famous fire round.
It's time for the fire round.
All right, the fire round. These are questions that come direct out of the BiggerPockets forums. And of course, you can get to the forums by heading over to biggerpockets.com/forums, where I know guys like Joe are active in helping to answer questions, which is awesome. So a few questions for you. First of all, this one starts a little bit, the beginning of your journey. But I'm looking at $20,000 to $30,000 Class C houses. Are they worth the headache for somebody just getting started?
The answer is depends on your goals. I think a lot of times we throw out questions and there's not enough context for people to answer them because if this and depends on who you are and what your skill set is. If you're really good with your hands and you're good at construction and you're local and you know the market, then maybe it's a great way to get going. But if you want to be more passive and your goals are something different, then maybe not. So not enough information.
Fair enough. All right, next question. I've been discussing potential investment opportunities in apartment syndications with my network. The toughest objection I'm coming across is, what if I need to get my money out early? How do I overcome this, or what's the answer to that?
Well, the answer is that they're not liquid like stocks are. It's an illiquid investment for the most part. You have to keep your money in within a year, I believe. That's just what the SEC says. A securities attorney would be the best to answer that one. But then after that, when an investor asks or mentions that to me, I tell them that we'll do our best to accommodate, and we have accommodated others. But it's treated as though it's an illiquid investment, and I would approach that accordingly. But you are investing with us, and you know who we are as people, so you know we'll do what we can when we're able to do it to accommodate your request.
Great.
Yeah, I like that. Number 3. What are the downsides to an apartment building with only 1-bedroom units? Which is interesting. You just actually talked about that. So what are the downsides of that?
Well, when someone wants to have a 2-bedroom, you can't sell them on a 1. But when someone wants a 1-bedroom, you can upgrade them to a 2. And I've done this before. I've been at the leasing office, and we've had a lot of 2-bedrooms available. All our ones were rented, and they said, "Hey, I'd like," they wanted a 1-bedroom, yeah. And they said, "I want a 1-bedroom." I said, "You know what? I have a 1-bedroom with a den." And they said, "Oh, really? Yeah. It's a 2-bedroom, but I have a 1-bedroom with a den, or I have a 1-bedroom with an office." And you can position the 2 bedrooms for the 1-bedroom people, but you can't do the opposite. And ultimately, it depends on your market and the economic drivers. If you're next to everyone knows it. If you're next to a campus, then you might be more inclined to have a 1-bedroom heavy apartment community, which, by the way, my 90% 1-bedroom, 300-unit apartment community is walking distance to a college. So first, I would look at what's the supply and demand for 1s and 2s. And second, I would try to always have more 2s than 1s because you can be more flexible with the renter.
Makes sense.
Awesome.
All right, last question. How do I check to see if an investor group is real and not some slick organization trying to steal my money? I mean, Ashcroft Capital. Yeah, great. How do I know they're not going to just run off with all my cash, right? How does somebody vet somebody like you who's doing these things?
I've had criminal background checks. I've had investors do criminal background checks. I've given them my social security number. And in addition to, and whatever other information I had to give them, in addition to that, you can, everyone, I would think most of us would know referrals, but the key to referrals is not to just go with the people who they give you as a reference. The key is to then talk to those references and ask those references who they know who invested in the deal, and then talk to them. So do about 2 to 3 degrees of separation from who they originally give you as someone to talk to, and then you'll start getting a better picture. Ultimately, it's you've got to go based on the research that you do. But then you've got to go with just common sense and do some common sense things. Great advice. Awesome.
All right, before we get out of here, let's go quickly over to our famous four. All right, these are the 4 questions we ask every guest every week. We're going to throw them at you right now, Joe, and see what you got to say. So number 1, besides your own, what is your favorite real estate related book?
Oh, it would be Crucial Conversations, and it is real estate related because it talks about how to handle conversations when the stakes are high and opinions vary.
All right.
Cool. Never heard of that one.
I think I actually have that on my nightstand upstairs. I think I just bought that one.
Oh, nice. That's great. Nobody cares. Favorite business book, Joe?
I like the book Blink. You can make quick, informed decisions in the blink of an eye. A lot of the times I think we get caught up in too much of the details when in reality we probably have enough to take that first step and make a quick, informed decision. Awesome. All right, man, what do you do for fun outside of real estate? And by the way, we had the pleasure of meeting your wife when you guys were in town here, and your future wife, and congrats again on your pending nuptials. It really, and thank you. And it really is spending time with her. The beauty of what I do is, I do it on, for the most part, I create my own schedule. And so like last Monday, Colleen and I went on a bike ride at 4 p.m. And so like, how cool is that to do that on a Monday compared to when I was in the advertising world and I was working 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So as soon as I get done having a conversation with you two, I'm going to Columbus and I'm going to see Texas Tech play Ohio State in college baseball. So, doing cool stuff like that. That's awesome. Very cool.
All right, final question of the day. What do you believe sets apart successful investors from those who give up, fail, or just never get started?
I'd say consistency. identifying what is effective and then just doing it over and over and over again. We live in an instant gratification society. Everyone wants fast results, quick results. The reality is real estate's, you play the long game. I mean, I've done a daily podcast 7 days a week for over 1,000 days,
which is crazy.
No one else in the world has done that. And the amount that has helped my business and my relationships and just learning and just growing as a real estate investor has been tremendous. And so just doing something consistently that you know is effective and building upon that, you're going to get big results.
Yeah. By the way, how do you do that? I mean, do you do like 7 shows in a day, or you do one each day when you record?
I now have I do 10 interviews 1 day a week.
Wow.
And so I do 40 interviews a month, and then the other days of the week, Friday I don't have anything scheduled, so it's either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I block off 1 day, and then the other 3 days I have investor conversations, client calls, stuff like that.
Nice. Crazy.
Right on.
That's awesome.
Right on. All right, Joe, since you brought it up, you got the podcast. Where can people find out more about you?
You can go to investwithjoe.com if you're interested in passive stuff, or you can go to multifamilysyndication.com. I've got all sorts of free real estate tools or on multifamily syndication videos, articles, stuff like that.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Awesome.
What's your podcast called?
Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever.
You've had some really good guests on there, including
you. Yes, Brandon. Yes.
Wow.
Legend. Including
That's
the legend.
That's amazing.
Including the legend.
You are incorrigible, dude. It's crazy.
Well, I want people to go listen. They're good stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll link in the show notes. All right, Joe, thanks so much for coming on, man. We really do appreciate it.
Hey, enjoyed it. Thanks, you too. Good catching up.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
See you later.
All right, guys, that was Joe Fairless. Big thanks again to Joe. Are you still convinced?
I'm convicted. Okay, so here's the one thing that, like, there's a lot of things that stood out to me, but here's one thing that I do a bad job of and I do better. So
no, there's more than one, buddy.
There's a lot. Okay. So, and I'm gonna say you probably do a bad job of this as well. And so, in our position and the fact that we network a lot, we go to meetups. We have this podcast. We meet a lot of investors. You and I both do, right? Like, I don't have a single list of people that have told me, hey, I would love to invest with you someday, or hey, we should do some deals together. I don't keep track of that very well. I mean, I kind of have like I started for a while. Anyway, what Joe is, he's very intentional about that kind of thing. And that's what I'm very much like, this is going to change in my life. I'm going to start being more intentional. When people tell me that they want to invest with me someday, I'm going to take that more seriously and say, okay, let's get your information. What do you want to know? What do you want to do? What's your goals? And maybe down the road, it might be 5-10 years from now, or it could be next year. At least then I have that organization that I can go back to those people and raise money for deals.
I think that's great. I would agree. I also am quite bad at that. So yeah. Very, very good advice. And yeah, great show. Well, listen, man, nice to chat with you as always. And I do appreciate all the commentary on the new me.
Yeah, it's the bearded midget. I don't know. Is that the wrong word to use?
Wow. Really? You just insulted a lot of people, so you may want to take that back.
How does that insult people? Because they don't want to look like you? I don't know. You are a very small man. You're like 4'9". I mean, aren't you 4'9"? 4'8". You're something like that. What's funny is people always tell me when they meet me in person, wow, you're way taller than I thought. You're way taller than you sound, right? I hear that all the time. Do people tell you all the time, wow, you're way shorter than you sound?
No, because they always think I'm the tall guy, because obviously I have more of a command of everything and better looking and obviously better at pretty much anything. So except BSing and
living,
brain inflation. I don't know.
Well, what's funny is like, okay, so Josh is not actually like 4'8", but I say that all the time because I want people to, when they see him, be like, wait, you're not actually that short. Like, you're a very average, normal, like handsome height, right? But I want people to think you're like 4'5" or something. Right,
and you are actually like 7'3". So
I'm actually 7'3". Yeah, I played in the NBA for a month. It was great.
Not good at all. Yeah, man. Well, listen, good show, good chat. Of course, you guys, if you like the show, definitely please, leave us a rating, leave us a review. Jump on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, wherever you're listening. Subscribe, hit the subscribe button. Please spread the word. Tell your friends, your family, your colleagues about the BiggerPockets podcast. Tell them about the site. If you haven't already done so, please jump on BiggerPockets, create a profile, create an account today, get active, start meeting guys like Joe, like Brandon, you name it. Get out there, make things happen, and lots of luck to you. With that, I'm Josh Dorkin, signing off.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
It's time for the Random 5. All right, let's get to today's Random 5. These 5 random questions we like to ask guests each week and kind of hide in the show at some point. So number 1, Joe, what do you look for in a friend?
Not you.
What are you talking about? Me and Joe are BFFs. Come on.
I'd say authenticity. Just being true to who you are, and that's most important.
Oh,
nice.
Good.
All right. Next question. Should there be an age limit for trick-or-treating?
Absolutely not. No. I mean, but if you're young, you should go with your parents.
Oh, okay.
Right. So you don't think it's weird if, like,
30-year-old.
a 30-year-old guy shows up at your door in like a ghost outfit or like a Hello Kitty suit that Brandon has locked in his closet?
I think that would be great for social media fodder. So no age limit.
All right. Next question. What is your favorite quote? Do you have a favorite quote?
Yeah, secret to living is giving. Tony Robbins says it on his TED Talk, where he gives Al Gore a high five, and that's everything I do. I have a give back component to it.
Very cool.
Fair enough. All right. Who are 3 people aside from Josh you consider to be geniuses?
Did you just talk about yourself in third person? Did you just?
I gotta build upon this thing Brandon's got going on. So I'm gonna try it. I don't really like how it feels, but I'm gonna roll with it.
I feel like our Skype screens, your heads are both getting larger, and mine's like just shrinking. I'm gonna be eventually off the screen by the end of this call. 3 people. I mean, what geniuses? I'd say Tony Robbins would be one. I think he has a special gift. He's able to package things in very easily understood and makes them very easily understood. That's one. Number 2 would be, I think Malcolm Gladwell is incredibly insightful. Again, he's good at uncovering stuff that we miss as a society and making into a practical information that we can use. So I'd say he's number 2, and I'm a huge Tim Ferriss fan. I don't know if I consider him a genius, but again, he is he's able to help shortcut a lot of things that could take a longer period of time if we didn't listen to him.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's awesome. All right, last question from me. By the way, all 3 of those guys, I totally agree. What is your favorite? Dark chocolate, milk chocolate, or white chocolate?
Dark for sure, because I'm a huge chocoholic, and if I did milk or white chocolate, then I'd be way overweight. So I'll go with dark.
Nice.
All right, good.
With sea salt, please.
Oh, fancy.
All right, and that was our Random 5.